3. Hi everybody, welcome to the first week of the 7 to 10 Science Seminar Series. Thank you for supporting this. I think it's a really interesting way to learn and it will give you a glimpse into how things will be done at uni, where you will get a set of lecture slides will be delivered, both from the slides as well as spoken, and then you would have some tutorial questions to answer, and you have a tutorial, and then that's about all of the correspondence you get for teachers and lecturers. So if you can become a little more self-sufficient, self-reliant in your learning earlier on, I think you'll be better off. And we can cover a huge amount of content in an hour if I'm doing it this way. So this week is cells to organisms and how everything links together, and that's biology. Next week will be a bit of physics, with sort of the basics of forces and Newton's laws and friction. We mixed in physics and maths there. Periodic table with reactivity and bonding, which is chemistry. Then we look at the systems in humans. We'll look at so the same systems in animals as well, but not in as great a detail. So periodic table and chemical reactions, so getting a bit more in depth. Conservation of energy, distance and time, speed, force, mass, and acceleration. Again, physics and maths. 31st of July will be ecosystems. 7th of August is radioactivity, protons, neutrons, and electrons. So wave and particle models for physics. And then week 10, DNA to proteins, the central dogma of okay. So this is the organizational levels of the organism. And it's going to be very much an overview this week, so we will go into it in more detail when we look at human systems biology. And there's a pyramid that we go on. The bottom of that pyramid is specialized cells, or cells that are designed to do a job. We then have tissue, organs, systems, and organism. We then go above that into ecosystems, depending on which textbook you use. So, again, got the specialized cells. The specialized cells then make up tissue. Multiple tissues make up the organ. Multiple organs make up a system, and the systems make up the organism. So if something isn't functioning at the cellular level, then these will not function correctly. If the systems don't work together properly, it will affect the organism. If something's wrong with one of the organs in a system, it will affect everything from beyond that. Someone is okay. Sorry about that. So the cells, the basic living units of the organism. And they were named after what we saw in corks. I can't remember who it was. French guy. Not very helpful. French guy. Right, I need to stop this recording and sort this out. I do apologize. So the oldest bacterial cells were actually found in the Australian continent in the outback. somewhere around 4 billion years old now. Somewhere between 4.5. And we have these different kinds of cells. I'll jump on the whiteboard and have a look now. So we've got two kinds of cell, or two cell types, two main ones anyway. Right, so pro, pen, great start. And you, best way to remember, we are you, bacteria are pro. So prokaryotic, simple, single-celled. They don't have membrane bound organelles. Three main differences for the purpose of this. Eukaryotic are complex, multicellular, and have membrane bound. So, easy way to remember. Eukaryotic is you. We are complex. We are multicellular. So, and prokaryotic, simple, unicellular, and typically bacteria or archaea. They do not contain membrane-bound organelles. Everything is just kind of floating. You can see that here. So the DNA is circular in the plasmids, and they have a cell wall. Human cells or animal cells do not have a cell wall, but bacterial cells and plant cells do. And I've got this flagellum. If you watch bacterial cells under the microscope, they quite literally swim around, attacking each other. So eukaryotic cells, complex, multicellular, and have membrane-bound organelles. They're the three main differences that you should focus on at this point. So this hasn't fit very well. So we have here we have the nucleus. Here we have the nucleolus with the endoplasmic reticulum. So this is where the ribosomes make the proteins. Then we have the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, which is where lipids are made. Vacuole, so the mitochondria is probably the one you've heard of. It's probably also called the powerhouse of the cell. And that is where it takes glucose, oxygen, and a number of other things and produces CO2 and water. So in the cytoplasm, which is all of the space that isn't filled. We've got the Golgi apparatus, so the proteins are made here. And then they go, and you can see all the DNA is here. So it makes sense that everything is clustered around the nucleus for most things. So the ribosomes they stick the proteins together from their component parts. We then have the endoplasmic reticulum, which folds the proteins into where they're supposed to be, into the space and the conformational shape. And these then go to the Golgi apparatus, and they get packaged into these little vesicles, depending on where they need to go. So they travel out, proteins made from the genetic information here, travels along, folded up, packaged here, sent to either somewhere in the cell, or sent out here. It fuses with the cell membrane and explodes, and the contents or the proteins are released. So the lysosome is where we break down fats, proteins, carbohydrates. Not so much carbohydrates, actually. Mostly just fats and proteins. And other cells and other things that the cells are given to destroy. And these microfilaments and intermediate filaments, which I've got to write down. Anyone would think that's a politics lecture given pro-EU is there. It's definitely not what I intended, I can assure you. So, we've got we have the cell, right? Got the nucleus. That's a terrible drawing, no. Totally okay with it though. We've got, and they call this the cytoskeleton. And this crisscross and mishmash, well, I don't know how you want to describe it. I don't know why I use mishmash there. But this crisscrossing, it keeps the cell in a shape. Because we know that a lot of cells are, their shape determines their function. And if they don't have a solid shape, then they can't keep that function. But what has to happen is there needs to be some squishiness, for lack of a better term, so that the cell it's got a bit of give to it. So this is a flexible cytoskeleton that's strong enough to keep the cell held in its shape, but allows for some flex. It's kind of like, it has like crumple zones, like on the front of a car. So if we pick out the most important. So we have plant versus animal. And this is the classic, what is the difference between a plant and animal cell? It's in the shape. . Plant cells are typically drawn as squares, And plant cells need to be rigid because if you look at outside, you've got plants that can go up to 150 meters tall. If they were soft and squishy, for lack of a better term, like animal cells, then you would not be able to have plants 100 meters tall. They wouldn't be able to grow towards the sun. They wouldn't be able to actively pump water from the roots to the leaves. So plants have a cell wall. We have a cell membrane. Now plants also have a cell membrane. If you ever ask the difference, if you ever ask the question, what is the difference between cell wall and cell membrane? That is the big one. Plants also have, you can see on the screen there, chloroplasts, and they are in the leaves, and they're involved in photosynthesis. I'm not going to go too deep into what photosynthesis is, but the plants use sunlight to produce sugar, which then they use to create energy. Animal cells, we have to get the sugar pumped in already. So we do not have the chloroplasts. So we've also got nucleus. Here's the cell, the nucleus is here, and it contains all of the genetic material. So if you think I've got a hard drive on my motherboard in that computer there, if I take that off the motherboard and put it on the desk, it's completely useless. So we need to have some machinery to make this work, and all of this genetic information here produces proteins. I'll go through more of that as we go on, but this genetic information produces proteins and tells the cell what to do. We then have the endoplasmic reticulum, which is kind of comes off here. Yes, anyone that hasn't done a session with me where I've used a whiteboard, you'll see just how bad my artwork is. Then we have the ribosomes here. So we have all the information stored here. We have the machinery for building it here. And then we have the Golgi apparatus, which then makes these little vesicles. So it's like production, it's like a production line and then out into the selling. So the cell membrane main function is to control things coming into and out of the cell. So it actively pumps things in and it passively pumps things in. So the mitochondria is where we take sugar, we mix it with oxygen and various other things, and we produce energy for the cell. So, again, something I'm not really going to go too deep into. And we say that hierarchy of living things starts at, what's the word? Specialized cells. But we have a stem cell, which its only job is to make new specialized cells. So it goes, okay, I need to make a new liver cell. And then it'll make a copy of itself. Just realized I'm still sharing the screen, so you're probably not going to be able to see that amazingly. But it will create a copy of itself and a new type of cell. And we used to think that that cells basically just exist. Something we didn't have a very good grasp on what this process entailed. We only knew that these different kinds of cells existed, and that they would just somehow become new cells. We obviously discovered that it was from stem cells. So this dysfunction of these stem cells can lead to cancer. It doesn't always, and not all cancers are caused by this, but it can. So, a question to ponder over the coming weeks, and something that I'll keep coming back to, is if all the cells in the body have the same genes, then how are the cells any different? So the cells in your brain and the cells in your feet, in your liver and your kidney has the same gene. And at the end of this week 10, we will answer that question, I hope. And it encompasses everything that you need to know for 7 to 10, for biology anyway. So, specialized cells make up the human body. Skin cells, liver cells, heart cells, so on and so forth. So they're all derived from these stem cells, and those stem cells are there at conception of the new child cell. So the short, very, very short answer to the previous question is the different genes are turned on in different cells. And we will explore that concept and how it means that we can have so many different cell types from all the same makeup. So smooth muscle cells are example of a specialized cell type, and they're found in the stomach and the heart. So generally, they are found anywhere where there is not. In the muscles, in your arms, they're called striated, or every muscle in the body. They're striated muscle cells. We have to actively think about contracting them, whereas smooth muscle cells will contract regardless. So if we have the gut and the stomach, they have this what's called a peristaltic squeezing action to push the food down and to break it down. The heart beats different, it contracts differently to other muscle cells, is an unconscious beating. We don't make our heart beat. We don't make our digestive system work. It happens automatically. So nerve cells make up all the nerves in the body. When you whack your elbow really hard, it hurts. People seem to think it's funny. It's funny when, actually that's a lie, it's funny when someone else does it, just not when you do. So they carry electrical impulses through the body. So, message from the brain for the muscles in the calf to contract when you try to put your heel on the ground, travels from there. It happens at a phenomenal speed. I don't even know what the speed is, but it's very, very quick. So, tissue. And I'll put this into an example after that. So tissues are made up of one or more specialized cells. So they perform specific function within an organ. So there's different cell types that make up the tissues in the skin. There's what they call cardiac pacemaker and smooth muscle cells that make up the different tissues in the heart. So again, lining of the intestine is made up of what they call endothelial cells, or I'll stop sharing to show this. It's a single cell lining in your intestine. So it's a lining. I mean, this isn't the exact picture, but it's just to give you an idea. Single cell lining. That allows for, we're thinking this is all the stuff in your intestines. It can then pass through this into the blood vessels. So any of the nutrients, anything that we want, can pass through this very thin layer of cells. But it is a tissue, it is not the entirety of the small intestine. The small intestine, assuming it encompasses all of this. It is but one cell type that performs a specific function. So it allows the nutrients to be transported through the lining of the stomach and into the blood and taken to where they need to go. There are other parts of the small intestine as well, but this is just one of the tissues or the particular cell type working together to form a function. I'll share again, 1 second. So cardiac muscle, there are 3 different types in the heart, or 3 different tissue types really. Cardiomyocytes, cardiac pacemaker cells, work to keep the blood pumping around your heart with the smooth muscle cells. So with these 3 tissues, we can make a beating heart cell in a petri dish, but we can't make an entire heart. So we don't have all of the parts. So we can make video. This is an example of tissue. These are bits of a heart cell that have been, or bits of heart tissue that have been grown in a lab, but they don't make a whole heart. So we put the right things together and we can make beating heart tissue. But that's not an organ. It's simply a collection of cells working as tissue. I mean, it looks really cool, but it's not an organ. So organ is made up of different tissue types. So these tissue types work together to perform a specific function. The heart, all of the components of the heart, the different cell types, or different cell types making up the tissues, making up the organs, all to make the heart pump blood around the body. So the lungs, probably I mean, they're all important, but the lungs, if the lungs fail, or if someone stops breathing very quickly after that, their heart will stop beating. So it's pretty vital to everything. So this is the site at which gas exchange occurs in any, not just the human body, but in any sort of relatively advanced animal that has lungs. So we breathe in oxygen, it goes into the alveoli, into the blood, and as the blood comes past, it then CO2 then leaves, and then we breathe out CO2. And we'll talk about what happens when things don't go right at the end, and I'll probably use asthma as an example. So the heart, again, if the heart stops beating very quickly, the person stops breathing. So that's why they say if someone's had in cardiac arrest or the heart stopped, it's important to just keep their heart beating in some way or another with CPR. So it pumps oxygenated blood away from the heart and pumps deoxygenated blood to the lungs, not to the body. That's my bad there. Good proofreading. So it's, I don't know, I won't use the whiteboard per se, but basically none of these things work without each other. You can say one thing's more important than the other. We can live without certain things. We can't live without the heart. We can't live without the lungs. We can't live without a liver. We can live with one kidney or a smaller liver. But everything needs to work together synergistically. And what I want to touch on is homeostasis. Anyone that's had me tutoring in this term or before this term will know what I'm talking about. Homeostasis. And dead already. Homeostasis. Homeostasis is the balance point. It is the body's happy place. Sorry, I'll just stop sharing so you can see the graph. Homeostasis is the body's happy place. It is the place, the point at which it is trying, you expend almost all of your energy every day just trying to maintain homeostasis. Your body gets sick, you get a virus. Your body sends your core temperature sky high to quite literally bake the virus out. The virus goes, the body lowers the temperature, we achieve this balance again. You cut your foot on a piece of glass on the ground or a oyster, I don't know, you cut anywhere on your body, doesn't matter. The body then releases clotting factors to stop the bleeding stops, the body stops releasing, the body's back to being happy. Now it's important to note that all diseases are simply either long-term disruption of homeostasis. I will probably use the end here, either diabetes or asthma. Diabetes as a long-term disruption of homeostasis, and then asthma as an acute disruption, and what the body does and how it tries to counteract things. And a lot of the time it's the body doing itself more harm than good. So it's 11 body systems in the human body. I mean, depending on what textbook you quote, sometimes they stick things together, others they don't. For the purpose of this, there is 11. And they work together to keep the body functioning. When one of those systems fails or it falters or something goes wrong, then everything else fails. And I will draw a flowchart to demonstrate what happens with asthma and diabetes. One second. So, cardiovascular system, the veins carry oxygenated blood away from the heart. Not always, not a hard and fast rule. Arteries bring them back from the extremities. So there's a reason that you can feel your pulse from your arteries. It's because they are under pressure and they're much thicker and bigger. So they carry waste products to the kidneys and the liver. They carry chemical signals around the body, so hormones, and they allow the immune system to mount an attack anywhere in the body. Plants do not have that ability. They have to be able to attack from anywhere. And I probably will be guilty of focusing too much on the human body, but I will do as much plant-based stuff as I can as well, and insects and other animals. So respiratory system, we inhale O2, which enters the blood supply through the lungs. CO2 is picked up by the cardiovascular system, or sometimes called the circulatory system. I mean, that's what I'm going to use. That's the textbook I was looking at. Respiratory system, the CO2 is this waste product from creating energy from oxygen and sugar. So, and the respiratory and cardiovascular, circulatory, whatever you want to call it, they are intrinsically linked. When one fails, the other one will fail with. Yeah. I'm going to do, that was going to be with asthma. I'm going to do asthma and diabetes at the end, sort of what happens, which systems get affected. So, yep, the systems make up the organism, and then we have 11 systems in the human body, which make us. Plants, same thing. They have organs, they have cells, they have tissues, which make up the plant, which is the organism. So obviously, we are an organism. You can have an organism, could be insects, could be anything. It's all going to have specialized cells, tissues, organs, systems. There we go. So, xylem and phloem, I'm sort of paraphrasing here because I realize I probably will run out of time. So, xylem and phloem, I don't know if any of you have studied plants in any great depth. I'm not going to go too deeply into them. But I've got the roots down here, and the xylem transports the water up here from the roots. I'll stop sharing so you can see the screen. Yes, terrible drawing. The xylem carries the water from the leaves. It looks like a weird finger. And the phloem carries the sugar from the leaves back down to the roots. So this is the sap that you see. So that's going that way, that's going that way. Water and nutrients. So if you think the human body, if I stabbed a hole in the side of that tree, it would quite literally bleed out sap, and you can see it when you do it to a tree. If you cut the roots off, then the xylem can't pull water up to the top, so they will die. So it's the same thing. And this is what we call the vascular system of the plant. Vascular system. So, similar to us, we all evolved from the common ancestors, so there will be some similarities. So, ecosystem, collection of organisms, and the local environment. So you would just say your garden is an ecosystem. Ecology is quite an interesting field if you get into it. It's interesting, but it's certainly not the most exciting. Biome. So you might have a microclimate somewhere where it's warmer in that spot. That little biome will be different to those around. So these are the thanks, Chaos, that my drawings aren't bad. Too good to me. Too nice. Made my day. Okay, so these are your tutorial questions, and I'm going to take you through what happens when a system goes wrong. Anybody, and you're allowed to chat now, I'll stop sharing. Allowed to use the chat to respond. Anybody have asthma? Or know someone with asthma? So yeah, asthma is an immune system overreaction. People laugh when I say this, but people can be quite literally allergic to the cold air. Kale, do you know anyone with asthma? So, asthma has one phase. The immune system overreacts to something you've breathed in. So that's one system of the body. The immune system causes the lungs or the respiratory system to increase mucus production, Okay, Izzy has asthma, so she'll know what this is. Increase mucus production, it constricts the airways. So immediately yep, so lots of people have asthma these days. Unfortunately, we haven't really come up with a better solution for it yet, the way to treat it. So, increase in mucus production. So this causes a decrease in what we call the SpO2, or how much of your blood has oxygen attached to it. So now we've got immune system, cardiovascular system, respiratory system, cardiovascular system. Okay, so then we have the brain does the following. It tells, go over this slide. Increase the respiratory rate. So people with asthma having an asthma attack will start to hyperventilate, trying to get more air. This leads to an increase in the heart rate. So they get a racing heart, because the body's trying to pump oxygen around, the little oxygen that it has, it's trying to get it to the brain. Yeah, sorry, just Kale's asked, how do people get asthma? Yeah, I think a lot of people, it's genetic at this stage, but you can get it. A lot of adults get adult onset asthma as well. So you get increase in respiration rate and increase in the heart rate. This drops the blood pressure. What happens here? You increase the respiratory rate and the pH of the blood goes down. This is bad. Really bad for the body. So the kidneys begin trying to fix it. The brain, part of the brain, sends hormones to release energy. From the muscles. So now we've got another system involved. Kidneys begin fixing. What else have we got? So kidneys begin fixing it, for lack of a better term. pH in the blood goes down. Respiratory rate goes up. So how many systems have we got now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not going to go much deeper than that. The liver. The liver is involved in this. So we have the digestive system as well. And then what we do to counteract all this is we give steroids, which stops this whole reaction, as Ventolin. And that stops all of this. But you know a person that's had an asthma attack, for a couple of days afterwards, they are exhausted, absolutely wiped. Because just about, maybe not 2 or 3 of the systems have done a huge amount of work. So everything is linked together. There is no, this system does this by itself. That simply doesn't happen. Now we can look at, and all the body is trying to do with all of this, basically in trying to fix it, in trying to reinstate homeostasis, the body does more damage. Anyone know diabetes? So type 1 and type 2 diabetes, we'll focus on type 2, because that's the simplest one. So type 2 is what they often refer to as a lifestyle disease. So that is a little bit harsh because not everybody who has diabetes is suffering from a lifestyle. Some people are born with it, some people are genetic. And what happens is that when you eat sugar, your body releases a hormone called insulin. And Jacob and I were discussing this the other night, that these hormones that are produced by the body, there's only types 1 and 2. Okay, yeah. So these hormones that are produced by the body they are more effective the less of it there is. When we have a constantly raised level of insulin, what happens is the cells basically switch off to it. So insulin is important because if we don't have insulin, then we don't produce any energy. So constantly raised level of insulin, the body trying to keep homeostasis will get rid of those receptors on the outside. So it will no longer recognize this chemical messenger. So people that have type 2 diabetes have to manage their diet really well. They can't eat sugar. Things like alcohol, sugar, they can't have. So the body trying to keep homeostasis switches off the cells to this insulin. And with that comes massive lifestyle changes that are required. I think I'll leave it there today. I apologize about the beginning. If you're watching the recording, it'll be a bit jumpy. I just had a couple of these students who were a bit lost trying to get to their session, so I had to pause the recording a few times.